Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast. We have a fantastic guest for you today. He's a marketing guru, social media rock star. He's an industry thought leader, and he is a content creation extraordinaire. We are lucky to have, please help me welcome Alec Hansen, Chief Marketing Officer at loanDepot. Alec, welcome back to the show.
What an intro, man. That was incredible. It's so good to be here, man.
Well, it is great to have you. You have a wealth of knowledge, and before we get into all of the wealth and knowledge, I always would be remiss if I don't thank you, because you're always gracious with your time. I was looking for a camera. I was looking for lighting. When I started getting into video, it was on the weekend, and you just responded back. Here's where to go. Here's what to do. So I greatly appreciate that, because it's wonderful to see people in the industry willing to give back, and you have helped me out immensely. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, brother.
All right. So let's talk.
Yes.
We know 23 was a rough year in the mortgage industry. Kind of give me, where do you see things in 2024? And then we'll dive into marketing and social and video and everything else.
I think I'm an eternal optimist. So, I look at 24 and I'm going, this is great. Like we're finally going to see some upswing from the down cycle and some return to normalcy, and maybe the trauma's kind of ending. So I'm seeing really positive signs towards what's coming, but I also kind of want to temper that with, I'm always looking for that side of the thing, the bright side. I'm always looking for a little bit of the green pastures, because I think there's opportunity everywhere. So, I think we're going to be in for a healthy, good, solid year.
Excellent. I couldn't agree more. I'm a glasses half full guy, and I think the market conditions are starting to level off.
Yep.
It doesn't mean it's going to go back to 2 or 3 years ago and be the most incredible year ever, but I think it's going to have an improved market compared to last year.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's opportunities in every market.
100%.
So let's talk about it. You're great with LOs. You're great with explaining how do they grow trust, how do they build relationships. Talk about, what are some of the biggest challenges LOs have with doing that and doing that effectively?
I always think most LOs I know thrive on change, or are very good with change. So some examples, right? I know of so many great LOs who survived 2008 and the meltdown that happened in mortgages, and they were forced to change and evolve, and they did. And then you look at 2020 and 2023 and the ups and downs. What a swing. Like, what a massive upswing and what a dramatic downslide. And how many people are just adapting and orienting themselves. But at the same time, if the change isn't forced upon you, there is a huge challenge for a lot of originators to proactively change. So the best example of this that I have is in 2008, the world ended for a lot of people and they were forced to change, meaning programs just disappeared. Like,
right.
Pick a stated income, right? So if you did stated income loans, they were gone. So you had no choice. I knew loan officers who had never done a fully underwritten loan before.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is, dating myself, but they had to radically change. They were forced.
I was there, brother. I'm with you.
So they did it. Now you look at this cycle, and one of the major changes that's required is to implement a digital strategy to complement the local and physical strategies. It's massively important, but because it's not forced on anybody, the barrier to do it is self-evident. People are still falling back on limiting beliefs, on bad perspectives, and they're staying away from the hard work of change because it's not required. Now, that doesn't mean everybody. I see great originators changing and diving in, but there is a lot that go, well, I'm not being forced to change, and so what's happening is their business model is eroding, and they don't know why, or they're frustrated with it, and they're looking for other things to blame, when really it's their lack of evolution into the contemporary marketing strategies that they need to do to augment what they're doing traditionally.
Well, you made a comment, and I so agree with where you said that digital needs to complement what you're doing locally and what you're doing in person.
Yes.
So explain to me some of the strategies that you recommend digitally that you've seen really complement that. I mean, I know I've seen it when I go to trade shows now, because of this podcast, because of putting video out there and putting yourself, people now are friends. They trust you. They start talking to you. They'll stop you in the elevator. I mean, And that the relationship is 2, 3, 4 more rungs up than just showing up.
So you nailed it, and I'll piggyback off it. So relationships have always been the game. Anytime I speak with any group of people or I'm talking to individuals, and we start to really dive into our relationships, the commentary is, will more relationships positively impact your business? And it's like, will more and deeper relationships positively impact your business? And everyone's like, of course, yes. And so I'm like, great. And so the traditional way of getting those relationships is pretty old school. We go belly to belly. We go to open houses. We go to broker previews. We call people for meetings. We send them mailers. We cold call. We text. Awesome. All that stuff's awesome. But what you just said puts the pin on it, which now the ability to complement physical relationships with digital relationships that allow you to blend those two things together and create that synergy. Now, exactly what you said from your own learnings, when you go to trade conferences or events and people that you haven't been able to meet with face to face or consistently who have seen your content now come up to you like your old friends. Yep. And so that's really the unbelievable power of this stuff, which is it's all about relationships, always has been, and I think will always be for forever. But now how do we make those relationships and deepen them using relevant contemporary tools? And that's digital strategy 1.0.
So let's talk digital strategy. Let's talk video. What are some of the biggest hurdles for LOs, even for lending executives, to get in front of the camera? Well, why don't they? What are their hesitations? Give me some of the common objections you hear.
Well, let's start with, there's layers. So let's start with layer number one. This is not for me. It's not my style. And really what's happening is there's a disconnect there between objectives they want to achieve and tools that they can use. And so someone who says, well, it's not my style, I'm like, well, is your priority to grow your business? And then if you go up to the executive level, is your priority to grow your organization, maybe through recruiting or brand awareness? And they go, yeah, that's part of my objective. That's part of my objectives. Okay, great. Here's these tools like social media or video on these platforms that can achieve these objectives faster. So when it's not your style, what you're really saying is, I just haven't really put the thought work in to connect the outcome I'm trying to achieve professionally with the tools that are available for me to use. And so that's number one, is people just haven't connected these. As a recruiting leader, back when I was running the West in retail, some of my objective was to grow my organization. And then secondary objectives were to train and coach and push my team to find new strategies. So video and social allow me to do all those things if I just connected the dots and realized that the tool was right here in my hand. So that's number one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. That is such good advice. I know my listeners are taking down notes, copious notes, or using AI to transcribe it for them, but keep going.
Well, so that once we kind of get through that, like reframing of the platforms and their use and this whole ecosystem, then we run right headfirst into insecurity. It's the next monster, and it's a big one. And it comes right up and it attacks in different ways. It says what you have to say isn't valuable. It attacks saying, like, you look and you sound terrible. You get that old "I have a face for radio" garbage, right?
Yep.
Like, so it attacks your looks and insecurities. It attacks your value and your knowledge, and like what you're going to get embarrassed. It really it has all these different angles that it comes at people, and it puts them in a really small box. And it cripples their ability to get into these places and share and drive influence. And so, there's lots of ways to attack that, but it becomes very personalized. And all the coaching and one-on-ones and mentoring and my viewpoint on this whole thing really distills down to one core concept, which is there's a community out there for everybody. And to help people see that, I tell this really kind of silly story of, have you ever taken a personality profile test?
Yep, a bunch of them.
Yeah. Do you remember the DISC test, DISC?
Yes.
Okay. So I always use this example because it's the easiest to do, but there's two polar opposites in the DISC test. There's the D and then there's the S. And the D's are the drivers and the S are the steadiness or the engineers. And when you really start to unpack these, you realize that the D's tend to be not very detail oriented and the S's tend to be engineer minded and very detail oriented.
Hyper. Yep.
And if you ask either of those people to make a video about pick a topic in mortgage, the closing disclosure or the process or how much down payment you need, somebody who is D-oriented is going to be very driven and results oriented and kind of high level, action points. And an S is going to be methodical. And their video might be 10 minutes of deep explanation. And the D personality is going to be like a 1 minute, 30-second video, bang, bang, bang. Here's the facts.
Right.
And all of a sudden right there, people should realize that empirically, there are different people that are going to be connected and resonate with different strategies. Right there. There's going to be people who are like, I'm bored. That's 10 minutes. You're too long. And there's people that are going to be like, this guy's a snake oil salesman. I can't deal with them. They're too fast. They don't need to slow down. And as soon as we get to that point, we realize, this whole thing is, there's community for everybody.
And I'm so glad you said that there's a community for everyone. I remember being on this podcast and one of the guests said, Michael, just put it out there. You'll start attracting like-minded people. People who don't like your content are going to stop watching it.
They go away.
And I was like, awesome.
Yeah, they don't hate. They don't stay around and hate. They just flitter off.
They just leave. And once I got past that, I'm like, great, let's just keep putting out content. And the people that like it are going to come and view it and engage. And the people that don't, they go away.
Yes.
I can deal with one snide comment or whatever, and let's just keep rolling. So,
I put out thousands of pieces of content in the last 6 years, and I've probably gotten like 2 people who actively just crapped on me publicly because it's just not in human nature. Human nature is not to do that. There's not that many bad people in the world.
I would agree. And I think what I have found is there's so many good people in our industry. People like you who are willing to share, hey, here's camera, here's lighting, other people that will give tips. I've shared my tips because I see a wonderful example for you. So we are encouraging content creators.
Yeah.
I follow your videos. I love your videos. I always comment on, I loved your Good, Better, Best whole series. I learned a ton from them. And I use it a lot when people are like, well, what microphone do you use? I'm like, well, I'm not a big soundboard guy, so I still use a Yeti.
You sound great. You sound freaking fantastic.
It's better, but it's not the best. You could have a Shure, but I'm like, I prefer simplicity. And because that Yeti can connect right into my computer and I don't have to have a soundboard, that works for me. And they're like, oh, all right. And then some people still go off and buy the Shure. They'll do something else. But I loved that series. I watch you all the time. And now I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You are a master at video. You've been doing a ton of video. And now I see on your feed popping up with quite a bit of frequency. In addition to video, you're also using a lot of static images with very powerful messages. To me, and knowing you, that's very intentional. Talk to me and talk to our audience about why you started doing it and some of the results you're getting.
A long time ago, and I hate that I don't know who said this to me, because somebody told me this. They said, you need to be a student of your own experience. And part of that really resonated with me because I have a hard chip on my shoulder that I'm working through with gurus. I like practitioners. I like people who are like that's why I like Gary Vee, because Gary Vee's like doing it. He's making content. He's messing up. He's finding things out. And then he's sharing his learnings. And so he's not coming from a place of like, let me tell you how to do things. He's like living it. And I love that. And so one of the things that I've been so pro video that I'm worried that maybe I'm missing some things that are just as enriching or just as helpful and powerful as video. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's see what happens. Let me take some things that I really care about and put it in written word and deliver that as a static image and see if people resonate the same way. Because sometimes, if I'm honest, and I know this about myself and others, nobody's watching every video they scroll past on the internet. It's too much. It's too much.
Yep.
And so I know they're not. So, but maybe if I hit them with something static, that they're gonna read it, and it's gonna go in here versus listen. And I'm playing a little bit, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can, and that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
See, I love that. And that is such a great example. I mean, because I've gone with big, heavy pictures on my podcast, and then I've just put a small little logo. And the fact that you're always learning and being a lifelong learner, I think is what it's all about. We haven't arrived. There's new things I'll learn every day. I love doing the podcast because I learn from people like yourself who are out there practicing, experimenting, trying new things. And I think we all realize not all of it's going to hit a home run, and that's okay. Talk to
100%.
me. This is a topic that I think a lot of people struggle with as well. They finally get excited. They finally start, posting some content and everything. They're starting to grow a little bit of a following, and they say, Michael, I'm not getting any engagement. Talk to me about some of the reasons why you think people don't have engagement. I'll be more than happy to pipe in as well.
We are such an instant gratification society. We are, and it is built into our DNA. But we know deep down the truth of how the world works. We know that if we want to get results in our health and our fitness, that we have to consistently, not once, eat better and work out more. We know it. And we know going to the gym one time does nothing. So we know all this. We know that if you were one of the best realtors in the market and I called you for a meeting and you didn't answer the phone and I left a voicemail, that unless I call you back, that you're not going to just call, I'm not going to get a deal from you. Unless I have 22 meetings with you and prove my value, you're going to give me no business until we establish trust and likability. So we know all this. And then we have the audacity to be like, well, I've put out a video or 100 and be like, that must mean I win now, right? When do I win now? I did it. And it's like, you don't understand. You have to connect these dots. So you made a great example, and I'll share my own viewpoint. I put out a ton of content. I've been doing it for 6 years now, and that's a long ass time. And I've been very, very consistent, starting with 100 videos in 100 days to launching a podcast, a book, and all these things I've been doing. I'm sharing and sharing and sharing and sharing. What ego do I have that I think people are going to stop their busy lives to be like, oh my God, Alec put out another piece of content today. Let me stop everything I'm doing and watch this. That is insane. But what I know is happening is that I'm making continual micro impressions on the community I want to influence. And exactly what you said happened to me the other day. I was in New York speaking at the Inman event. And
Okay.
I had and it wasn't like a giant 45-minute keynote. I was on the stage for 15 minutes talking about LinkedIn. It was great. I loved it. I loved the ability to get up there. It was a privilege. And the second that I was walking around that event, pre and post getting up there to talk, people that had seen my content, that never comment, were grabbing me like we were old buddies and just talking to me about what's going on and telling how that my content has helped them in certain ways. And I'm sitting here being like, I know. And I want to choke them, being like, can you comment next time? Because I feel real alone sometimes. But it's
I'm
the
so glad
truth.
you said that, though, because so many people, I've had that experience where they don't ever comment, they don't engage with it at all. I was at a church event like 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and this is a guy that I talked to. We're somewhat friendly. He pulls me aside. He goes, "Man, I love your new videos." And I look at him and I'm like, "Why didn't you ever comment?
Never comment.
Why don't you?" But I think that's why it's so important to consistently put it out there. Now, the
Yes.
other aspect of engagement that I think people fail misery, and I'd love to get your
Yeah.
knowledge and expertise on, is they don't then engage with other people's comments
Oh, yeah.
or content, and they don't engage when somebody interacts with their content.
Yeah.
You put a video out there and somebody said how much they liked it, and then it's silence. They don't respond at all. They don't interact.
I feel like Dale Carnegie is rolling over in his grave. You remember that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Yep.
I think every salesperson worth their salt has read this book at some point in their life, especially the pre-internet people who are here, like we had Blackberries and no key. Like we all read this book, and this book had some amazing key philosophies that are true today. And some of them are like, be more interested in others than you are in yourself. Ask them questions, learn their names. All these things that are foundational to just networking and bridge building and relationship building stuff. And then we get social media and we just forget all of that and we just throw it away. And then we jump on there and talk about how good we are and our 5-star reviews and our fast closing. And I'm sitting here like, how have we forgotten the basics? And I swear to you, if people would read How to Win Friends and Influence People with the lens on how do I make a social media strategy out of this content, out of this strategy, they would radically transform what they post and how and who they talk to and what they do on these platforms. And their business would explode.
That is
Go be more
such
interested in other
a good
people.
piece of advice. We're winding down, Alec. I could talk to you for hours on end, and I thank you enough. Don't worry, I won't do it. I know your time is very valuable. But as we wind down, what are a couple of tips that you would leave people if they want to start doing more on digital, if they want to start having content more engaging? I know you said go read How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie Classic, start implementing. But what are one or two other things that you would leave our listeners with today?
Couple like quick hits. Number one, get on these platforms and surround yourself with the people that you want to build influence with. Just get on there and listen and see what they're doing and be interested in what they're doing and comment on what they're doing before you even put the camera on. That is such an easy, low-hanging fruit action you can do today, is grow your network and connect to the people you want to be on these platforms and be around. That's number one. Number two is really dig deep to the core of why you do what you do. And put it on a sticky note and put it right by your computer. Why do you do what you do? And if the answer to that is somewhere close to help people, if it's starting to really distill down into I want to help people with what I do, then that's the foundation you should stand on when you start to decide what content you're going to put out.
So good.
Every time you turn the camera on, you should be standing on the foundation of how is this helpful to somebody else? Not how does this help me and brag about how good I am or show the world how great I am, but how does this help somebody else? And if you can do those two things, you're going to be set up for so much success. And just remember that there's an audience and a community out there for everybody, and you have a voice and you matter. And if you can, if people just believe that, they would change their lives.
Oh, such good insights, Alec. I can't thank you enough for being a guest on this episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast.